Well, thank you for staying with us, and the hope that Nigeria will be better is the reason we hold this program every Saturday. Now, I took the liberty on this particular topic to go on Twitter, not Threads, Twitter, to check the trending stories or trending topics as at this moment. One of them is the name of the governor of Anambra State, Governor Charles Soludo. And why is he trending? One of the things that's making him trend definitely is this particular issue of palliatives. On Thursday, beg your pardon, the National Economic Council on Thursday in Abuja proposed that state governments implement cash transfer programs using state-generated social registers to soften the harsh economic realities since the discontinuance of petrol subsidy on May 29. Of course, for some, this is different from the National Social Register, which as of 2023, this year, has captured more than 61 million vulnerable Nigerians that are eligible for various government social programs. Now, some believe that unless we get a credible data institution like the MBS to compile the register, the social register, this new register that is being talked about for state governors, from state governments, will also have integrity issues, because integrity issue was the challenge with the previous National Social Register. So the NASCO, that's the National Social Register system, and community wealth ranking is one other thing that a number of people are also considering. A lot of issues are packed into this constitution. So the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, that's the NASCO, was established in 2016 by government in partnership with the World Bank to strengthen social safety nets and social protection system in Nigeria as a core strategy to help to end extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity. There have been questions around that. Let's have conversations around that this morning with a panel of three. Ayokwara Kwaka Apera is a country director, FHI 360 Nigeria, is former national coordinator, National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, NASCO, in the Office of the Vice President. You will please help me, correct me if I didn't quite get that name correct, but you're going to have to help me with that later on. Reverend David Ugolo also joins us this morning. He's Executive Director, Africa Network for Environment and Economic Justice, as well as Sulaiman Arigbabu, who is Executive Secretary of HEDA Resource Center. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Apera. That's easier to pronounce. How did I do with your name, first of all? So I hope I've not corrupted it.
You tried. The name is Yowakwa.
See? I deserve a beat.
Yowakwa.
I deserve a negotiated award. Okay. Well, let's get into the conversation. You know, first of all, you are not unaware that there have been contests and contestations about that social register. It is disturbing to know that something, maybe you want to first of all tell us, what's the history behind that register and how was it compiled? Because there are those who are wondering, a lot of work has been put into it. Why just discard it simply because we think it has integrity issues?
I'll start by, thank you very much for having me. The first thing I want to say here is that, unfortunately, we live in a country where if I am not the one in charge or responsible, whatever happens, I will have doubts about it. That's the syndrome that has unfortunately been the burden of our country. And the statement by the governors, with all due respect, it's rather unfortunate, because when you question the integrity of a register that is developed by the state governments themselves, then it leaves a lot to be desired. But I'll leave the challenge to government to the chief CSO who is on this call with us, David Ogalo, because I'm not.
Well, if you're still with...
So I'll stick, how was it developed?
Exactly. So how was it developed and how was it compiled?
The social register was developed, is still ongoing, so it's not a thing of the past. The social register was conceived under the World Bank supported project called the National Social Safety Net Program, under the coordinating office called National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, NASCO, under the office of the Vice President. It started under the office of the Vice President. Now, the register, to develop the register, the NASCO office used first what you call the geographical targeting mechanism, wherein the poverty map of Nigeria, compiled by the National Bureau of Statistics, was used to rank our communities and local governments from the poor to the poorest. Now, and we then started with the 30% poorest local government in each state. That is the geographical targeting that was used. Then a community-based targeting system was then deployed. This is where the community is duly sensitized on the mechanism for developing a social register. The community is then divided into 3 homogeneous groups, 1 for male, 1 for female, and 1 for youth. They are asked to define poverty within the context of the community. As you know, 1 kilometer makes another language in Nigeria. 1 kilometer makes another cultural background, history, etc. So the way we perceive and we see poverty is different. Now, there are some communities that would define poverty simply as if a family of 10 is living in 1 round pot, they are deemed poor. If there are only 1 square meal, or if after we have harvested our crops, they cannot afford any land, any farm input, and they go after we harvest to scavenge for food, then they are poor, etc. Now, once they define poverty within their context, we then say, okay, identify the families that are poor. So the male group will list the families that are poor within the context of that community. The female group will list the families that are poor within the context of the community. And then the youth group will also list. We'll bring all of the community into plenary, and then we'll harmonize the list. So male group will say Hassan or Olufemi family is poor, because in the male group, we define poverty as the family that cannot afford to send their children to school. And so this is the family we know they are poor. The women group will say, no, Olufemi family is not poor. Perhaps the man is stingy. He's not sending his children to school because his wife is the one that changes clothing at our town's meeting every week. Wow. So he's not. But Olukayode's family is poor. So this debate will go on with the family, and the family will come down with 1 single list. We call the harmonized poverty list of that community. The community will then select 1 male and 1 female. 2 of them will sign off on this list. These 2 people become the focal persons for that community as far as the social register is concerned. And this is where the integrity of the social register lies. So in over 178 communities that the social register has been developed, each of them have a community list signed by the community focal persons. Now, once they sign this list, the local government staff and each of the 775 local governments have a community-based targeting system domiciled in the Department of Community or Department of Planning of each of these local governments. The local government team will then take this list and hand it over to the enumerators. The enumerators will go with a tablet, computer assisted, with a checklist of 138 data sets, indicators, and sit with the family. They must meet each member of the family when they go, and they will enumerate these members of the family. the computer-assisted program will generate what we call the NSR number that is automatic and is unique to every individual. They will then sync this data, will sync automatically to the database and the server of the state government. The state coordinating office, SUCO, which is based in the Ministry of Planning of each state of the federation, manned by a director or a civil servant of that state, chosen or recruited by the state government, will sit with his team and clean this data, reconcile this data, and it becomes the state social register. NASCO team sitting at the federal level does what we call the quality assurance. They set the guidelines and the quality assurance. So they pick each state social register, they clean it, and then accept it into the national social register. NASCO went ahead to set up accountability mechanism involving CSO, civil society organizations based in each of these states. The civil society organizations are from the community. They understand the context, they understand the issue. They randomly pick numbers from the social register and go back to the field and confirm each and every member of this family. If you go to www.nssp.ng.org, you will find the CSO's scorecard. That is a report of the CSOs on this system about its integrity. Now, once this is done, it becomes part of the National Social Register that you mine from to do cash interventions. Now, each household has a geo coordinate. If you go back to the website that I described just now, you will find the aggregate figures of each state social register. You will find and you can disaggregate the social register to individuals by gender, by education, by vocation, by the type of business they are doing, the number of households that are headed by female, either widows or single mothers, the kind of the household that are headed by male, the kind of household that are headed by orphans or vulnerable children who might have lost their parents but are heading their households. Now, in the social register, we also do what you call the community profile that clearly states, and it is also the information on that website, how to get to that community, access road to each community of the federation. The GSM network, access of each poor and vulnerable households to market, to school, to hospital, electricity, and other social amenities in each of these communities. The social register also has the altitude dimensions where you can map clearly even flood areas. So it's a rich database.
For those who are wondering,
most comprehensive.
My apologies, Dr.
Yes.
Pera. For those who are wondering, you've mentioned this website like, you've referenced this website like twice or thrice now. What is this website again?
www.nssp.
Okay.
www.nssp.org.ng.
Okay. NSSP.
That is National Social Safety Net Program .ng.org. If you Google the Nigerian Social Register, it will take you to that website as well. Now, it is the single most comprehensive database in this country. 62 million individuals, 13 million households. It is the biggest social register in the world. And we started developing this register in Brilliant. It is up there with us. 15 million poor and vulnerable households across the country. Now, it only started in 2016. Yet at 2016, we had single registers, state registers in about 12 states. In 2018, I came in as the national coordinator.
We'll come back to you, Dr. Apera. Just 1 second. Let me also take on Reverend Ugolo, who is Executive Director, Africa Network for Environment and Social and Economic Justice. Once again, Reverend, thank you for joining us. Now, 8,000 naira. That's the only thing many people remembered about this before the president called for a review, which the National Economic Council, which comprises of governors, the vice president, and a number of other individuals, sat at a meeting to discuss in the course of the week. What's your take on the position of the National Economic Council on the National Social Register?
Thank you very much. Again, I want to thank Channels Television for giving me the opportunity to be part of this conversation. Like you rightly said, it's such an important issue. The outcome of the NEC meeting, again, has helped to put the issue of the poor on the top agenda in the country. So that's the beauty and the lesson we must take away from the NEC meeting. Rather than see it as bad, I see it as an opportunity, and that at least you have the elite in the country assembly in Abuja under the chairmanship of the vice president, and the priority issues that attracted their attention was the poor. And so that's something we must celebrate, we must commend. And so far, so good. All the media across the country, including Channels televisions, are now putting priority attention. It has never happened like this before. So for us, it's a huge opportunity. And how we move with this opportunity is how we take an advantage of it. And that's the reason why I think that the outcome of the NEC meeting is with misfeeling. Misfeeling in the sense that the language that is coming out from the governors. So the NEC meeting need to be a bit coordinated so that if you have seen what has happened in the last few days after the NEC meeting, you have Governor of Nasarawa saying different thing. You have the Governor of Kaduna State saying different thing. And you have the Governor of Anambra State saying different thing. And like I said to some of my colleagues, as you know, the NEC is just an advisory body to the federal government. So we are here to wait for the position of the federal government under the leadership of the president, which is President Tinubu. And so we have to understand the difference when NEC make a statement and who is making this statement and what is the implication for the federal government decision. Once we understand that, then we'll be clear about it. And as we know, we're talking about the federal government project. We're talking about federal government intervention. The social registry we are talking about is not state registry. We're talking about national social registry. And you have heard from a very prominent stakeholder in the whole entire process who have described how the registry came about and what has come out from the National Executive Council in terms of how they deal with this challenge is something that we really need to interrogate properly. One of the governor, Soludo, speaking on behalf of the NEC meeting, said clearly that the integrity of the National Social Registry is something that they cannot vouch for. And when a few days later, the governor of Kaduna State was put under questioning, he said different thing entirely, that they are not saying that you should disclaim the registry, but what they are saying is for it to be looked into and areas where there are challenges, it need to be addressed. Then the governor of Nasarawa State also said they are not disowning the social registry. So when you look and review this statement from all these governors, it tells you that we haven't been able to get any coherent statement from NEC. So how should we respond? How do we respond? How do we respond? We should respond in a way that we make sure that we take a coherent position. And what is the coherent position is that the Nigerian Social Register was designed with support from World Bank. World Bank provided facility to the federal government. And before you can receive any credit from the IDA, you need to put in place a proposal. and the federal government provided the proposal. And when the federal government provided the proposal, what happened? The World Bank approved a $500 million grant. And part of the reason why that grant was approved to the federal government was that they were going to put in place a national social register. There's no way World Bank will give a grant to Nigerian government without stating clearly what the money was going to be used for. So for a government to come on board now and say what the previous government did is not to be taken into consideration as we move forward, is like, I would say, it's a bit challenging. So what is my take, and possibly the take of my colleagues who have also seen the outcome of the NEC, is that rather than discarding the National Social Registry, are there issues in the registry? Yes, there are issues.
Okay. Let me quickly ask Mr. Arigbabu. Well, Mr. Arigbabu, a number of concerns have arisen. So we've listened to, as you have as well, how the rigorous process through which the social register is compiled. In fact, I'm looking at a document here. 5 pages, no, 7 pages of a form have to be filled. And it's talking about all kinds of things. The register is looking at your social network, looking at your household living or dwelling characteristics, your household assets, what you have at home, members' education, health and disability information, labor market characteristics, identification of household members, and a whole, load of other information that is required to be filled before anyone can be admitted into that. So that's one hand, that process. There are those who are also looking at, okay, the source of this and the process that has been described, rigorous as it is, that's one. There are those who are considering, how about we allow the National Bureau of Statistics to look at this? Because it was the National Bureau of Statistics that came up with that multilateral, or I forgot, multidimensional poverty figures of 133 million Nigerians, a far cry from what is contained in this document produced by the by NASCO. And then there are those who are wondering, don't we have a National Population Commission? Isn't it their job to come up with data, that what they themselves call the mother of all data? So there are questions back and forth about how we care for the needy in our environment, starting with the most important instrument of all, which is data. The federal government initiated this, as you've heard Reverend Ogolo say. World Bank came to assist with some significant funding. Now, some state governors are saying, maybe we need to question it. Is it significant that about 50% of governors in office today are first-timers, and consequently, whatever rigorous activity that may have gone into it may not be known to them? Or there is something that a number of people are not getting about this whole thing?
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm happy at where you concluded your question, because about 50% of the governors are new, and even those who are second-timers actually started in 2019. This effort started, as you have heard Dr. Apera said, in 2016. And I must seize the opportunity to congratulate and thank Dr. Apera and the current people working on the national for the thorough job that they have done. I haven't said that the governors are not out of line to say what they have said. They are politicians, and they see the things that the ordinary persons do not see. There is indeed a national social register, and if we allow those Nigerians who are in charge of it, Dr. Apera's colleagues who are there now, they will give us an authentic register. The register that started work in 2016 and did, really commendably up till 2019 thereabout. But, some things then happened we created a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and what have you in 2019. And that is where, so the governors who are talking now, they are politicians and they know what they have done, or they know what their predecessors have done. After 2019, the work of this National Social Intervention Program was tampered with. The then Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, in cahoot with the 9th National Assembly and some other interested people, actually tampered with the work of the Social Intervention Program. I do not know if their tampering entered into the register, but we do know that the criterion that had been used earlier to decide who should have the 5,000 naira, for instance, transfer, and some other monetary support of interventions of the federal government, became a thing for politicians to, politicians started to submit lists. Now, I am going to be very careful not to discredit the original register, but I'm saying that there could be the possibility of having another register with politicians. And that's probably what those governors are referring to. We know that during COVID, we saw stacks of money. The whole idea was not to have stacks of money and be doling out as if we are crazy. There was a program, there's a process. We know that the getting to the last mile had some challenges. You had some people who tried to corrupt the system, but civil society monitored this. We worked with the program, and I mean, Reverend David Gollow's organization and a lot of organizations worked to see that the last mile gets the benefit. That's why during that time, you heard stories of women in either Kwara or Niger who were able to build a classroom block. Somewhere in Yobe, women were able to buy a car so that they can transport pregnant women to hospital without having casualty and all of that. So this money meant a lot to people. But when politicians got hold of the process, and that happened after 2019, a lot of things happened. Let's not run away from that.
Okay, very interesting. Dr. Apera, you want to respond to that? The fact that there could be another list somewhere else, which could be responsible.
And so the governors are saying that.
Okay. Just one moment, Mr. Arigbabu. We lost connection with you for a moment. So, Dr. Apera, how would you respond to that, the likelihood of some other list that is probably being used? Consequently, and of course, naturally, it will be pushed forward as a social register. How would you respond to that?
First, I'll respond by distinguishing between a social register and a beneficiary register. There are so many beneficiary registers. Fortunately, I was the national coordinator while in the office of the vice president up till October 2019. And when all programs under the vice president at that time were moved to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, I was still the national coordinator. The National Social Register was protected by the fact that it is tied to a condition of the World Bank loan. Now, because of this, it was completely separate from the social investment programs. So the social investment programs have their various beneficiary lists, like the JEEP, the Empower, the school feeding program. And then the Ministry of Humanitarian also did what they called at that time Rural Women Cash Transfer, which has their beneficiary list. All of these were separate completely from the National Social Register. The National Social Register maintained its integrity, maintained its independence, and maintained its neutrality because of that World Bank condition. Because the World Bank also set up monitoring mechanism that also included a private audit firm that was also auditing those in the register, confirming that they are actually the people and confirming that they are cash transfer. The second distinction we must make is that the social register is not a cash transfer register. The cash transfer have a beneficiary register. For the federal government, 5,000 naira cash transfer that was there up till June 2022, when the project initially ended, drew from the World Bank loan, and the condition of that cash transfer to Nigerians was that it must be mined from the social register. Now, that is the second. Now, the government also then agreed with the World Bank for a NAP scale-up for that cash transfer program. So this distinction needs to be very clear.
Now, on that, my apologies, Dr. Apera. When you say
no problem,
there is a difference between the register and the beneficiary register, how are they different?
Now, a social register stands as a register of the poor and vulnerable, as a database that gives access to vulnerable and poor families and individuals to access any social benefit. It could be health insurance, like the National Health Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, I understand that. I saw all of the criteria, that you spoke about the other time.
So, but the beneficiary register now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beneficiary register is a subset of the social register. So you mine from the social register to make up a beneficiary register for a particular intervention.
Okay.
So you have a beneficiary register.
So essentially, are you saying then, Dr. Apera, are you saying that going by what Mr. Arigbabu said the other time, that there is a likelihood that there are other beneficiaries that come into the list beside those that are from the social register? Is that what you're saying? Is that likelihood exists?
From the point, not from the point of view of the social register.
Okay, so
when you mine the social register,
okay,
right? You mine the social register. We'll give an example of you. You want to do an intervention in your community. You come to the to NASCO or the SUCO state office. You say you want to mine the data of poor people in your community, and they will give you access to mine these poor people in your community. Say in your community, the poor people identified by the register are 10. So you take this 10 to do your cash transfer intervention or build houses for them or give them access to hospitals, right? Getting to your community, you say, okay, in addition to these 10 people that are mined as poor, I also want to do widows.
Oh, okay. All right.
You can carry your widows and add to that list.
Okay, that is understood.
Yes, it doesn't have anything to do with the social register.
Okay.
Yes.
Reverend Ugolo, now, in the light of this understanding, if you agree that there is a likelihood that such things happen, how do we then marry? Because it will seem that that's the point of divergence.
Well, I think there's no really big problem here. I think what Apera have explained is exactly what has happened. And what my brother from EDA was saying is also very clear. During the transition from the vice president office to the Ministry of Humanitarian, a lot of things happened. If you remember, that was time where, coincidentally followed with the COVID palliatives that was also coming up in the country. And the Ministry of Humanitarian was also headed by a politician. And it was also that period the National Assembly was also raising questions about the legitimacy of the so-called register. And there was also a fight from the National Assembly to be included because they are the ones that are closer to the people. So this controversy did not just start with this current NEC. It actually started in the previous administration. And as Apera have rightly explained, the National Social Register is an independent database that no politician can influence. And you know very well that when politicians cannot influence things, that thing is not always credible. That's really the challenge here. And what actually brought this confusion is that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs did not, and I remember we raised this question, and if Apera can still remember, about this issue of awareness, about clarity as to who is responsible for the COVID palliative and who is not responsible. But they didn't respond to our cry. So the federal government is solely responsible. Today, I am happy. They can now see the consequence of not engaging and listening to civil society. You know, I am happy that you can see the consequence when government try to do things secretly. the whole palliative that the Ministry of Humanitarian was implementing as at that time, they carried it out with lack of transparency. There was not accountability. And so Nigerians today are rather not surprised when NEC have raised questions about this. I think the real challenge is for clarity to come before the current National Executive Council. If the NEC, they have concern, which really, like you know, the social register is not a static thing. It's an ongoing development. And you need to have that clarity. Like Apera have also explained, when you want to mine the social register for your own beneficiaries, you need to also design it properly, like the state. The state government can also go to the social register to also mine their own beneficiary for their own special social protection program. But the program we are talking about, the cash transfer program we are talking about, it is for the federal government. And I give you an example, which one we have also monitored. You can see the report. We monitored the Abacha loot, which is the Abacha through, the $325 million that was recovered from Switzerland, was also part of the cash transfer program. And this money was also used for cash transfer program. And it was part of the money that was used for the 5,000 naira. And then the $500 million that the federal government secured as IDA facility contributed to 20%, while 80% came from Abacha loot, making it 100% for the cash transfer program within this period. You see, until we are able to make this clarity to Nigerians, it will be difficult for Nigeria to understand which of the beneficiary are you talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
And then you also know that we are talking about 133 million poor Nigerians. And the total number of population we are talking about that this cash transfer was targeting is less than 2 million. So it's difficult. So you might probably live in a community where nobody has benefited. And then when somebody is saying that they have received 5,000 naira, you will say, no, it's not true. It's like an elephant.
Okay.
When you touch the elephant's head and nobody else touches the tail, it is what you touch you describe.
Exactly. So it raises a lot of questions. So I'm sticking with you for a moment, Reverend Ogolo. So in the light of these understanding that you all are giving us now, where do we go from here? Because there are those who are wondering, just as you said,
yes.
If you collected, another person is unable to collect, most certainly the governors who are with them are going to be wondering what is happening here. So it's, I mean, as Mr. Arigbabu said, it's fair to see things from their perspective for once. So how do we execute this whole palliative system in a way that would be acceptable? It's not likely to be acceptable to everybody. But how do we go about it in a way that will be acceptable to a much larger number of people that will be able to say, okay, this is significantly credible and we can improve on it?
Let me also announce to you that the federal government have also secured another $800 million for the scale-up of this NASCO project, the social protection project in Nigeria. And what it means is that more resources will now be available. So, and for the federal government to secure that facility, it was based on this social register. And like Apera rightly noted, I think there is an opportunity for the NEC to call for an independent forensic audit of the current Nigerian social register. There's nothing wrong about it. It's possible that some people that were enlisted into that database, they are dead. It is possible some of them that were in that database that have benefited, they have moved on. They have improved in their status. They can no longer be seen as poor. So there is an urgent need to look into the register, clean it up, and then I am happy. And I want to encourage the NEC to continue to show more concern and more interest. Like Apera noted, in designing and implementing the National Social Register, the state government are key stakeholders.
Okay, on that, let me, because we're winding down now, Reverend, so allow me to go back to Mr. Arigbabu. So Mr. Arigbabu, here we are now, and the state governments, as you have heard, have been involved in the process thus far. Governance is a continuum. As you also noted, 50% of the governors today are new. 50% of them are well aware of what's been happening hitherto. Now they are calling for their own registers. What are your fears? What is your confidence? And how do we marry both data systems in such a way that it, at the end of the day, represents the genuine interest of Nigerians? Think you are muted.
Yes, thank you very much. With due respect to Dr. Apera and his team, let's be clear. The social register is not a theoretical thing. It's meant to be harvested by government, by individuals, whoever wants to make interventions. So some of the things we have mentioned ought to have in mind, the participant, the beneficiaries ought to have in mind from that social register. And I'm telling you, I'm putting it straight to you, that a lot of things that government eventually did from 2019 was actually done by politicians, a lot of beneficiaries.
Exactly.
Because the reason we are having all of this conversation is because government has brought in another 800 million and is about to start sharing. And sharing for who? This is the reason why we are talking about the register. And we are saying that there is a credible register that can be used from somewhere. If they have other criteria by which they want to add other people, let's be clear about it. That is one. These governors will say the things they are doing, because don't forget, in some of those states, parties changed, and states changed from one party to the other. In some, not the candidate of the previous governor. So politicians want to settle their accolades. They want to settle those who worked with them. They want to be the ones in charge. They want to be the one to be seen to be giving this bounty so that they can use that to claim, electoral benefits later. Now, coming to government intention of sharing, whether it's 8,000 or it's 15,000, I know that there's nothing we can say here that will change the mind of people we have in government. Government seems to have its mindset. But I want to say that at least let them listen for once to popular opinion. Even if you cannot go back entirely, let's do a 60-40 share and see which one works best. Use 60% to do the normal jamboree you want to do, and we know that a lot of it will be immersed in corruption. But at least the remaining, use it to intervene in the transport sector. In major cities, make transportation. We are not saying that make free transport. But in the past, when we had, even under the military, we had labor transport, we had all sorts of things. Make this available. Go to major hospitals. The Luth of this world, the Unimed, the federal institutions. Go there, even if it's just the cost of X-ray that government is going to offset for citizens who are poor for the next 6 months. I tell you, it's going to make a lot of intervention in people's lives. Go to such institutions that directly service people and where people are not able to afford. Put these monies down there, put systems in place to ensure that the money gets to those who need it, and appeal to those who don't need it not to access it. We are not saying that people should go and access cash. If somebody brings their child and they need simple malaria drugs, you can make it available in designated hospitals that people can, so that in the next 6 months, give us real palliative that will really touch the lives of citizens. Not everybody, like Reverend Ugolo noted, just about 2 million. Not everybody will get on that register. Not everybody will get this 8,000 or 15,000 or 5,000. But there are some things that can really help people where it matters. Not every money should be left to the whims and caprices of politicians or political appointees who are in the end not accountable. Those who managed under the Buhari regime, they are not here to account for the things they have done. And now citizens are being told to make further sacrifice. So this is what we are trying to avoid. We know that there is a social register. We know that it was painstakingly put together. We know that it's still going to be there for us to make. We are seeing that now the government is about to do another round of intervention in the system. Let's not just leave it to because they will not use that your own social register, Dr. Apera. They're able to use that of the politicians. And that's why the governors are crying out. They don't want it to better the nest of their opponents.
But aren't you appeased, Mr. Arigbabu, by the explanation Dr. Apera gave the other time, that there is the social register and then there is the beneficiary register?
So I am actually saying that the reality is that there is a social register and we know it. And we know that if government wants to be sincere, they will always go to this register to do some of their most critical interventions. Now, there's also a beneficiary register. But what is the process of putting this together? That is what I am telling you. That the process of putting that together is largely 80% by politicians. The ninth Assembly, the 9th National Assembly, the state governors then, many of the ministers under the Buhari regime were the ones who submitted names of these people because they want people to hold them some benefit at the end of the day, to be seen as their benefactors. And this is what we need to correct. This is why these governors are shouting. They also want to become the benefactors of the people so that they can claim the electoral gains later.
All right, let's begin to wind down now, gentlemen. We have less than 3 minutes to conclude. So, Dr. Apera, in conclusion, what will be your final thoughts and perhaps recommendation moving forward?
My final thoughts, perhaps with the more time, would have at least also explained the multidimensional poverty survey by MBS that stated that 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. MBS also released the absolute poverty head count in 2020 that states that 40.2% of Nigerians are under poverty, which means about 82 million Nigerians. Now, the absolute poor are 82 million. With COVID, 90 million. NASCO has 62 million of those in the social register. It's the most comprehensive database. I would tell government, every single governor has the social register in its Ministry of Planning. Go to your Ministry of Planning, call your permanent secretary to call the coordinator of your state register to sit with you, explain the process of getting this data. We had a practical example in Zamfara where the governor actually formed, at that time, formed a team that went to the community and discovered that indeed it was a community-based register. And he came back to give a pass mark. We had the same thing in Kaduna, and the Kaduna state governor at that time, Rufai, publicly announced that all intervention must be from the social register. He went ahead to sign an ESCO extract that states that all interventions must mine from the social register in Kaduna State. Lagos State Governor Shonwolu, who is presently there, not only signed that executive extract saying that all social intervention must be from the social register, he has gone ahead to establish the State Operations Coordinating Unit as a full-fledged department in the Ministry of Planning. Now, these are some credibility statements out there for you. So I would say the federal government, your design of your palliative interventions could be varied. Like Golo said, yes, nobody says that you must stick to the social register, but if you're doing palliative and you're targeting the absolute poor, you go to the social register and you mine.
Okay.
You have other intervention on palliative, on transport, on electricity tariffs, on housing, etc. Yes. You can use whatever criteria you want. But if you want to do a poverty-targeted intervention, go to the social register. Each household has a geo coordinate.
Okay.
Anybody can pick that geo coordinate and trace the individual and put a face to the money that you're giving them.
Okay.
It has that accountability issues that you can also mention impact and show Nigerians the effect and impact of your intervention. Okay. That's what the database gives you. So I would encourage them to do that.
Okay. Reverend Golo, your final words.
I would like to appeal to the governors, the 36 state governors. I look forward seeing them also looking into their state budget and see what amount of resources they can allocate for social protection. That will again send the political signal that they are putting their mouth where their money is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Arigbabu, your final words.
Thank you very much. I would like to appeal to Channels TV and to other media organizations. This is good that we're having this conversation, but there's another bit of this conversation that needs to be had, and that is how the cash transfer is corrupted and corruptible. Because if you do not deal with that, this 800 million will still go the wrong way. There are so many ways that people have perfected in corrupting these transfers to people. So if we are able to deal with that, have that conversation before any transfer starts, it will help. And I'm also appealing to the government, the state government. I'm joining Reverend Ugolo in saying that they should also come out heavily and intervene. This is the time that you need to show to citizens that they count, that their lives matter. And for the federal government, please use part of this money to do social intervention in the health sector, in the transportation sector, and let us now check at the end of the day which has really impacted most on Nigerians. Is it the one that you invested in their social well-being or just the transfer? Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts this morning. This has been quite insightful, I believe, for everyone who's watching. Dr. Yowakwa Apera, Country Director, yes, I got it this time, I know. FHI 360, Nigeria, former National Coordinator, National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office, NASCO, Office of the Vice President, as well as Reverend David Ugolo, who is Executive Director, Africa Network for Environment and Economic Justice. We have also had Suleiman Arugba, Executive Secretary, Header Resource Center. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay. So we're back right after now for another topic. Do stay with us.